Okay, welcome back to our Climate and Environment Committee meeting of the 20th of February. So now we have three more reports or updates to have for the remainder. I think it's three, actually might be four. Three. And so I would like to invite the team here who are already here. And so Monique is actually going to be the overseer and introduce each of the authors or presenters as we go forward. Thank you, Monique.
Awesome. Inga mana, inga reo, I rau rangatira mā tēnā rā tātou katoa. Ko Monique England toko ingoa, ko Aotea Manager, Climate Action and Connected Communities. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa. So this morning, you'll be seeing half of my incredible team, so including Jamie Young-Drew, Matt Nabney, and down the back we've got Rob Dunn and Evelina Brunero-Bielman. So that's half of us, so we've come today. So thank you for the opportunity and the privilege to come to bring the following three updates to you. The purpose of the presentations are to provide, or to continue to provide updates on the team's work in our climate action section. We have one report looking at Council's work on carbon emissions, so that's getting our house in order. We've got one on what work and initiatives our larger council is involved in to respond to the Climate Emergency Action Framework through our embedding approach and support from our team across the council activities. And finally, a planned project will be kicking off shortly. So with that, I will hand over to Matt Nabney, our Advisor Sustainability. Kia ora koutou.
All right, kia ora koutou, everybody. So I'm Matt, I'm the Sustainability Advisor in the Climate Action team. And today I'm just going to take you through an update on our interim greenhouse gas inventory report. So this is our latest report for the 23-24 financial year. Just to note, these results are still interim, so the results have been audited, but it's still going through the full Toitū certification process. And we expect the final report should be delivered by the end of February, early March. All right, so headline, piece here is that Council has reduced its emissions by 11.3% compared to the last financial year, which is a massive achievement. So our total emissions were 3,500 tonnes. So that's compared to the previous financial year. This really is a massive effort, and a lot of it is driven by the improvements that Council has made to the way it processes wastewater, and also to those sustained emissions from electricity. So those changes and improvements to wastewater, it's part of the renewals and maintenance program. So it's delivered a lot of co-benefits besides just improved operation. As part of our work to bring in more Category 3 to 6 emissions, we've also added in this report the emissions produced when we freight the wood pellets that are used at the treatment plant to dry sludge. We transport them from Taupō down to Paraparaumu. So it's about 43 tonnes. And also we spoke previously about the work to capture emissions from staff commuting. So we spoke last year about that, and they're estimated about 370 tonnes. However, they're outside our current mandatory boundaries, so they're additional, so they're not yet technically part of our total gross emissions. They're additional, but they are there. When they're added, they'll increase our footprint by close to 10%. Now, just a breakdown on where our emissions are coming from, which business units. As with every other year, since we've started reporting our emissions, water and wastewater treatment. So obviously there's a lot of energy that's used to treat water, and also there's a lot of emissions that come off wastewater, so that black water. And obviously second is the aquatic facility, so that's always been second. So that's a lot of electricity, a lot of natural gas used to heat the water across our pools. So
would you like questions during this, very brief questions, or at the end?
Possibly at the end, unless...
Okay,
yep.
That's fine.
So you see here, across the board, we reduced emissions by 11.3%. I noted that that's due to those wastewater emissions, but we did have a lot of reductions. So refrigerant, in the last financial year, previous report, there was a refrigerant leakage from the Coastlands Aquatic Centre from the heat pumps. That was just due to plant, which has now been repaired. Sludge to landfill. So due to the improvements at the treatment plant, so I didn't specify those improvements, but at the Parapara Umu plant, they've replaced or refurbished the clarifier, replaced the sand filter, and installed new aerators, which has meant it's producing less emissions, but also producing less sludge. So the plant produced 200 tonnes less sludge compared to previous years, which is massive. But we also have refined the calculation for sludge. So working with Toitu, we just looked at a way to simplify the calculation compared to other years, now that we have new information that we can use. Air travel, so we had fewer international flights and also fewer domestic flights. Wastewater processing, so once again, due to all those improvements, we're producing less emissions. And this is compared to when it was last calculated back in 2020. We aren't required to calculate it every year, but they have backdated some of from previous years, and we've seen a steady decline in emissions, so that's awesome. And obviously petrol use, as we continue to decarbonise the fleet, we're producing less emissions from petrol. And it really does showcase that Council's renewal and maintenance program can deliver a massive range of co-benefits. And so we did have some increases. So fertiliser went up. That was due to a new type of fertiliser being used, but also a need to improve the quality of our fields, just to make sure they can actually survive multiple seasons of sports. But it's a more improved fertiliser, so it's lower leaching, and also it's applied in a more targeted way. So it's not just blanket sprayed, it's targeted to high need areas. Electricity. So emissions from electricity fluctuate. If we have drier years and less windy years, emissions go up as Huntly gets turned on. In previous years, electricity was much higher. Currently, it's very low, but it is creeping back up again. Natural gas, obviously, if water's drained off the pool, then you have to reheat it quite quickly. Diesel use, there's a lot going on, and also wood pellet, that's that new source. So targets, so considering these improvements that have been made, so looking at that initial target we had, the old target, we would have reduced emissions by 72%, including wastewater emissions. But the medium-term target that was set in 2022, we have met that target early as a result of those changes to wastewater processing, but also the changes to electricity. So when the target was set, emissions from electricity were about 1,200 tonnes. Now they sit at just above 750. And in previous years, they were 1,200. So if they creep back up, then we don't achieve that same benefit. If emissions from electricity were what they were, we would have only achieved about a 14% reduction. So electricity still plays a huge role in this. And we're also using more electricity every year. So just 1% more, but that also impacts that. And so we're going to work with Toitu just to see what we need to do about the target, if we need to reset it, and what it might look like. And we also think here, so those 5 projects that Council committed to back in 2023, they will lock in a reduction of 660 tonnes going forward. Won't be as variable. And you can see here, yeah, we've shown a lot of progress through time and hitting that original target. And we've led this space across other councils in New Zealand of setting that target early and then showing leadership to really reduce it rapidly through time. And just an update on category 3 to 6. So obviously it's a big work program. We have to set a target for those emissions by the end of this year. We've added new emission sources. We're always looking for new emission sources, but we think that this is one of the biggest levers that Council has to really meaningfully reduce our corporate emissions, but also impact our district-wide emissions. So by working closely with our suppliers and to set it clearly in procurement what we require, for either to signal what we need from suppliers to reduce their emissions, and how they're tracking, we think it's a big lever to pull because they go up. So obviously we've done a lot of work across council. They doubled, our suppliers' emissions doubled compared to last year. That's if you just multiply the value of the contract with a specific factor. And yeah, so that's a key work program for us going forward. And I just wanted to flag that obviously council is doing so much other work to reduce its emissions and just to improve how we use what we already have to make sure that we're not using too much and to reduce cost. So the climate team leads an energy group which meets with different asset managers. At the moment we're meeting with reps from property team, from the pools team, and also from waste, and we're looking at bringing more people in just to look at different ways we can reduce emissions across the board. So for example, working with an energy specialist, we think we could save about 18% of our electricity just from the civic building. It saves us about 10 grand a year. And so improving what we use first before we really push on is a really good step to make sure, that we're just using things more efficiently. And also that, as Jamie will show in the climate action update, the council just undertook a vehicle audit to look at how we can use our vehicles more efficiently. The pools team is looking at how to improve efficiency at the Waikanae pool and the Otaki pool. And also the property team is removing gas, installing electric heat pumps when they come up for renewal. So there's a lot of work going on outside in this space. So next step, so we'll notify you if these results change in any way once they've been certified. And also we're going to continue to work across council to really identify any more opportunities. And yeah, we need to set that target for the end of 2025, so there's a bit of work to do before then. So that's the focus of the team. Yeah, so I'll end it there and I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much, Matt. So on Councillor Coe.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, absolutely awesome result. It's a good news story, and I hope we can spread the good news about this. What crosses my mind is there must be some cost savings here for council, and it would be really good to have a process by which we can identify what those cost savings are. But obviously, on the flip side, we've also had to invest in certain things. There's been cost incurred in order to get the cost savings, if you know what I mean. So it would be really good to identify what the net result is to council. You know, okay, we've had to invest in these things here, but here's the benefit. Because I guess from a ratepayer's perspective, we're looking at, you know, what's the rate of return on the investment that we've made in this space. And I think part of the good news is that not only are we, you know, cutting back on our emissions and so on, but we're also saving council money as well. And I think that's all part of the story. And, you know, because, you know, there will be people, I'm sure, out there in the community saying, why is council paying so much attention to this area and spending money in this area? That's ratepayers' money. What do we get as a benefit for that? And I think it's really important to tell that side of the story. So are we capturing that cost saving at the moment? And if so, is there some way of communicating that?
Through Madam Chair. So yeah, so at this stage we analyse, say, electricity use for example, from the treatment plant to see how the new aerators have improved energy performance, and they have reduced energy. And then also obviously this energy team is looking at, although we have looked at, you know, obviously in the RTP there's the installation of the solar panels, they will massively reduce cost to council and also shield council to future costs. And as part of our work program, yeah, a big part is looking at where we're using energy and then how much can we save if we implement certain actions to reduce that.
But I guess my question is, are we actually measuring that cost saving and reporting on it?
So a big part of our work program is to expand that.
To do more work in that area.
To do more work in that area, yeah. But that's working closely with the energy specialists. We're really looking at how we're using energy across a bunch of different sites, looking at options to reduce that energy and how much they'd save us. So the work for this building, saving of 10,000 per annum if we implement a series of, and some of them are quite simple, they don't actually cost anything, it's just changing settings. so a lot of those things to reduce energy use don't actually even cost anything.
Right.
It can be simple as
Again,
changing.
it's a good news story, isn't
Exactly,
it? You know?
yeah.
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 Yeah, but I think, if we can really, do some work around that area of quantifying the cost savings, I think that would be really useful.
Yeah.
Thank you. But yeah, well done. Awesome work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coe. So I have to admit, we've got this presentation and two more, so if we can be quite succinct in our questions, that'll be great. Thank you. Councillor Halliday.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Fantastic work, guys, and I agree with Councillor Coe. There's some really good news stories here. Don't wait till the end to start telling them, because this is a proactive approach, and it's quite amazing the little things that add up when you're proactive, switch off switches, on switches, and just that little stuff. And we've always been told that last 20% will be the hardest 20%. So any improvements we can do it, but there's a lot of good news stories. I might be getting a bit ahead of myself in the next question here, but if you look at page 18 on the reports, just going back a little bit, there's the emissions by business unit. Just for clarity, is that the complete emissions from council?
So that's our corporate carbon emissions.
Corporate.
So that's all business units across
Yeah, okay.
across council.
And we just had a report come back showing that, transport's the biggest emissions in our district by a country mile, and ours are actually obviously quite low here. But we've got 3 waters occurring shortly, and Brendan, you might have to step into this one potentially. Our biggest one here is water and wastewater, but that's actually going to be taken out of council and put in literally a separate business unit. Have we thought about how that's going to, how's that going to affect our report? That's going to change our reporting as such in this space. I just was quite curious in the interaction potentially there, because that's, if we remove our biggest emitters, then council's going to look pretty damn fantastic. But in actual fact, the problem's still there.
Well, I was just going to quickly say, definitely. I mean, that'll obviously depend on the future makeup of what that water arrangement is, and if it moved to another entity but we still use it, then that falls into our category 3 to 6 emissions. So, like with the carting the wood pellets, we didn't used to capture that information in our audit, but now we do. Similarly with staff commuting, those staff are still commuting to work. They are producing emissions as a function of working here. Right. But it will still be part of our category 3 to 6 at least. It's just, it might shift from category 1 into category 3s to 6, yeah.
Okay, that's cool. I'm just curious. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Halliday. Councillor Warwick.
My question is, on the Waikanae Library, our big infrastructure projects, Waikanae Library and the upgraded Durotaki Pool, do we have solar panels on the roofs?
So Otaki is still going through the design phase. So there's still a lot of pieces around that are still moving. It's still ongoing design for that Otaki pool. Yeah.
And is that a consideration?
It's definitely a consideration.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if we don't have the money right now for solar panels, are you working with the infrastructure team to ensure that we can future-proof the roofs so that we can put solar panels on them in the future?
Absolutely. Te ara whetū. So the detail of solar hasn't come up yet, but we have been working under sustainability principles. We did investigate Green Star rating for that building. It was quite expensive to deliver and even to monitor. So we've adopted some sustainable principles, which our project management office are working through alongside with the governance board. So affordability is always a part of that, and that tension between, but having it future-proofed for a lot of these kind of considerations is definitely important for us. Yes. Yeah, so even, an opportunity would be if it were to be able to have like a plug-in in emergencies, all those kind of things. So there's been a lot of thought about what Te Ara Whetū could provide in community situations, but also then links up to power in those emergencies as well.
So just adding to that, so I think that Waikanae Library is going to be Green Star rated, but it's not going to be certified.
Don't waste money on that, just put the coal.
Exactly, yeah. Thank you. So, Mr. Judge.
Okay, I've got a number of questions, so I'll just run through them if you could take notes rather than trying to answer them all with the time constraints, or we will be here a while. Wood pellet, with regard to wood pellet cartage, the boiler was specified to take everything from green chip down to wood pellets. So if you can locally source that from, if you know of any community organisation that is responsible for cleaning up after storms where there's wood, you just have to chip that, stick it in there. My next one was, what incentives are there for staff commuting? Perhaps if you could feedback on that, what we're actually doing to incentivise people. Are you aware of the recommendation CAES 2023-12, which there was a resolution for 4 specific actions there. With regard to having met the target, I would hope that this committee would consider that we just re-baseline and carry and push forward and keep going for more reductions. Why have the Scope 3 sort of supplier emissions doubled, and what is the nature of that factor that's applied that you got that number from? Can we have a clear summary of where the corporate emissions come from, what the programs are? Just see if you can get it on a page or 2 so that we can see how they're being prioritised and where progress is being made. Just having the massive table doesn't help us see what's going on there. There's mention of low interest carbon loans, but no mention that they're actually being used to further reduce emissions. It just seems to be a lower cost of borrowing bonus. So it'd be interesting to know if we are actually using those to do other things with. One of the things in CAES 2023-12 was to further investigate government funding, stuff like Crown loans. Next point is, you have a number of programs in there. They're going to be done sort of as part of routine maintenance. My understanding is that we should be looking at total cost of ownership, and therefore today is the best time to do these things, because then that's when the savings accrue from, and every day we put it off, we're wasting money. We actually are making a deliberate decision to continue wasting money while we put these things off. And then on page 31 of the agenda, which I think is slide 5, so not slide 5, page 5 of your report, there's mention of low carbon town centres, but Paikakariki, whose town centre is essentially a car park with cafes tacked on. The best cafes in the district, I may add, that's excluded from low carbon consideration.
I think, I'm not sure if you're still on the current report.
Yes. On the audit, I've gone right through. Yeah. So there you go.
Okay.
I've saved even more time
Yes.
by getting those questions out there
yes.
now.
So thank you for
Efficiency.
your questions, and I suppose given the number of questions and the detail you're asking, I'll allow staff to answer where they can, but maybe some of this information needs to come back offline in a written form. It would be great if we all could have those responses.
Yeah, and I can just really speak to the audit when it comes through. It's got a summary page at the front. That gets published online on the website as well, just about the carbon emissions part. I think I'll let Jamie introduce the next part of the report, and then we'll kind of discuss a lot of those ones. But definitely in that, thinking of the timing and the detail, we've noted down a lot of those items, and we'll come back. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really good questions. Thank you, Christian. So now move on to Mr. Olsen.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's great work, good progress we're making along the line. But, as we say, the further we go, the harder it is to, find reductions. And we're getting closer to that point now. I think there's still a bit of work we can do. But my question is looking at something else on there, and I don't know how this is reported or if we're doing it, but normally when you see corporate reporting on this, you'd also report on how you're offsetting your carbon now, and most people think of this as like buying credits, but I'm not thinking of buying credits because often when you buy credits, you buy them from forestry. But what we have in our region is a huge amount of green space, and on this green space, we have a lot of native trees. And one of the things that you can do, is around about 150 native trees it would allow you to offset up to about 8,000 kilowatts of energy per year. So we've got a huge opportunity in our district with our trees to actually look at offsetting by calculating, you know, our asset of our trees in the district. Is this something that we're looking at doing?
I can jump in with an answer there. Thank you for the question. This is absolutely something that we're looking at, and this is a key issue that we're considering as part of the development of the climate change strategy going forward, and in particular the mitigation component of that. As you say, we recognise that there is a huge opportunity within our district to use green space to sequester carbon and offset our emissions, and the relative costs and benefits of going down that path, where it would be appropriate to do so, how that aligns with community values. These are all things we'll be developing through the climate change strategy that we'll be coming back to you with for further direction.
Thank you, Glenn and Jamie. Councillor Cooper.
Just a question. So you're counting as part of the audit process. You're counting the carbon emissions from staff as they come to work. So on our big infrastructure projects that we're kicking off over the next couple of years, one being the Waikanae Library, Otaki pools, are we counting the carbon that's created by those staff turning up to work? Like we've got 200 contractors working at Otaki pools. Is that going to be included?
So that if it's contractors working on that project, then that would fall under our category 3 to 6 emissions or our embodied carbon.
Yep. So we could expect that to go up quite considerably.
We would. So, I mean, that question that Christian Judge asked, why did our emissions double so much? So because we've been doing so much work, we've had a lot of contracts for some big capital works projects. The way the spend-based tool works, it's a Toitū-built tool, and it's one used by a lot of organisations. It's a very crude tool, so you just multiply the value of the contract with an activity factor. So if it's civil engineering construction, you just multiply the whole contract value to that one unique factor, and that changes depending on the work you're doing. So when council undertakes a lot of civil works projects, it goes up. As we go forward, big part of the program is to get actual data from our suppliers on, at the start it's their category 1 to 2, so it might be fuel they use, but as this expands, then eventually that becomes part of embodied carbon emissions. Yeah.
So, I mean, like, stats are pretty ropey, aren't they? So am I right in thinking that the audit, the actual purpose of the audit is not so much the percentage of carbon that or whatever, it's actually focusing us on being the best emitters that we can be, or the worst emitters that we can be, the best emitters, the least. So it's not so much the number, it's the intent of the organisation.
Yeah.
Because you can is what it is, right? But it's our intent as organisation and focus us in our work.
And it's also about to demonstrate through time, like a direction of travel. So, the first start of it, you're monitoring your emissions, like say for our staff commuting, we just need to know where we're at before we can actually meaningfully reduce those through time. And that's why you have medium-term and long-term targets. So a long-term 2040 target's one thing, but then you set goalposts along the way to make sure you're still heading in the right direction. And we've already seen from our suppliers already doing a lot to reduce their emissions, and everybody's at different parts on that journey, different stages, but a lot are already working in this space. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Last person I'll go to is Councillor Halliday.
Thank you, through Madam Chair. I've talked to this before. We witnessed the Living Building Challenge up at the Wananga up in Otaki. I think, Shelley, you're referring to it as well. And I was just a question. We talk about the green certification with regards to the Waikanae Library. And is that for what happens afterwards with regards to things? But the Living Building Challenge is the process of how it's built, what materials go in. Are we applying any of those sorts of rules to that process as well? And in our general builds that we do?
So as Monique mentioned with the two projects, Waikanae, Otaki, there's certain principles that we're trying to achieve. And a lot of that is drawing on these examples like Living Building Challenge, the Green Star, looking at how, so part of that Living Building Challenge is that you consider embodied emissions and the life cycle emissions as well. So if you put in a plastic pipe, what happens to it when it reaches end of life? So part of that is to either remove the product completely or to design it differently if you can. So we are, as part of these projects, we're looking at these sustainability principles and applying that across.
Would it be a fair
activity.
comment? And I know they did the same thing in Victoria University building. They put the whole internal infrastructure for wastewater, but then they went, well, hang on, was that really necessary? Because we could have just plugged into the wastewater system as such. So there's those pros and cons, and what I'm hearing here is what you're sort of cherry picking, if you like, the best parts of those and putting them into our own sort of approach. Would that be a fair comment?
That would be a fair comment, yeah.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
So thank you very much. So I've got a couple of questions. So first of all, absolutely great work in terms of reducing our emissions. It's fantastic, and I think, as was mentioned earlier on, sometimes when we put these initiatives in place, there's a cost, but I think it's really important to actually tell the story about how much money we're going to save as a ratepayer, but also what the benefits are for our environment. And that moves me on into my first question. So this is about our council emissions. Do you know if we as ratepayers, I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it, are tracking along in the same direction in terms of reducing our individual emissions? Do you keep tabs on that at all? Or because obviously council to me, is an enabler where it can to actually help individuals.
So that would fall under our district-wide emissions, and why I think we've thought that getting our house in order, that council can show leadership,
Yes.
and how we're reducing emissions, and then how we can support community to meet similar objectives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will probably add to that as well. There's also some district-wide emissions that are built down, or I guess broken down from our regional emissions. So we do some work to collect that information with all the councils. So, for example, the airport fuel usage, that's all kind of determined. And then we get a portion of that in our district-wide. And so tracking those trends as we go forward will be really important. And that's a big part of informing the climate sub-strategy for mitigation as well.
Thank you. So my other question relates to the graph on page 18, and specifically the aquatic facilities. And I think Jamie mentioned, or Matt, one of you two mentioned about how there have been initiatives at the Waikanai swimming pool and the Old Taki swimming pool. But I suppose I'm just wondering whether there's been any thought about all the heat that's generated in the pool here and actually harvesting it. And I know the technology is out there, and to me that would be a really good story if possible.
That would be a great story. So that is being harvested, so heat recovery.
Oh, is it?
It recirculates the air to help heat up the water. It helps reduce electricity requirements and gas use. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah. But it's another one of those stories. Yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe that's a separate story. Thank you. Okay, so no more questions. So now we'll move on to our recommendation, which is on page 14. That's noting both this report and that these are interim, and the final ones will be coming a little bit later on. So can I have a mover for those? Councillor Warwick and seconded Councillor Coe. No discussion. All those in favour? Against? Motion is passed. Thank you very much for this report, specifically Matt and whoever else is involved in it. So now we'll move on to Jamie's Climate Action Framework Progress Update. Thank you.
So,
Page 26.
Kia ora koutou, my name's Jamie. I'm a Principal Advisor on the Climate Action team. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to this update, which very much builds on the last item that we were just discussing. The context for the paper that you've received is that under Council's Climate Change Emergency Framework, we are committed to providing regular updates about our climate change work, and this latest stocktake for the 2024 calendar year builds on similar updates that Council released in 2022 and 2023. I've got 3 aspects of the update I'd just like to touch on briefly, and then happy to field any questions. The first thing I want to mention is that a key objective under the Climate Change Emergency Framework, and a key focus of our work, is to embed climate action across Council's activities and work. And the updates that you can see in this paper have been provided to us by activity managers from across the organisation and reflect the breadth of climate-related work that we have underway. The second point I'd like to emphasise, which has already been discussed by Matt and many of you in your questions, is that much of the work we are doing has many benefits beyond climate change. And for example, as Matt highlighted, the upgrades to our wastewater treatment plants, our swimming pools, and our community halls are not only reducing emissions, but improving energy efficiency and cutting costs. And across our wider work program, things are underway where we're improving health outcomes by reducing air pollution. We're improving community connection as part of building resilience to climate impacts. And we're improving biodiversity and environmental outcomes in addition to sequestering carbon through our tree planting programs. And one thing I'll just mention in response to some of the earlier questions is that we are currently working with our comms team to highlight and tell some of these fantastic stories in a really accessible way. The third and final point I'd just like to make is that in light of the work that we are doing at the moment on the new climate change strategy, one thing that this update does do is set out examples of the types of levers that Council has available to pull to meet its climate change objectives. And these obviously aren't limited to reducing our own emissions or improving the resilience of Council-owned assets, but they also include advocating to and working with central and regional government, and also supporting the wider community to take action and transition to a low-emission, climate-resilient future. And in the update after this one, you'll be hearing more from Rob and Evelina about some of the work we're doing in that space to enable our community groups to take action. And going forward, as the climate change strategy comes online, we think there's potential to use these annual updates to measure and demonstrate our progress against any new targets or pathways that we may set under that strategy. Thank you, and happy to field any questions.
Thank you very, very much, Jamie, for your presentation and the report. And then you'll see, obviously, there's a table 1 is massive. All the initiatives that are either underway or have been completed, so it's fantastic. So I'll now move on to questions. Councillor Coe.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. I started reading this list last night and it was so long, I thought, I'm going to give up. There's too much here. So it's just amazing, isn't it, what we're doing? But yeah, picking up on the point, about the other benefits, I think, at the risk of complicating everything, it would be really cool to see another column in this report that specifies what those other benefits are, not necessarily quantifying them, but just saying, as well as, improving things in the climate. This is the other side benefits that we're receiving. Just noting what they are at the very least, and maybe at some point we can move towards quantifying those. But I just think to give the context would be really useful, because again, I'm thinking of, ratepayers saying, why are we spending money in this area? How affordable is it to run all these programs? And it's about showing the return on the investment, not just in terms of the cost, but the other economic and health and personal benefits that arise from it. So it's very much like a cost-benefit story that we need to tell. So I think having that extra column, if it can be squeezed in somehow, you might have to. Yeah, I'm not sure how you do it, but it would be just good to have that information there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coe. I was going to mention the same thing. It's about, obviously there's $1 at the beginning of it. What are the benefits, the overall benefits? And so obviously that helps you prioritise where you spend the money to make the biggest difference as well. Okay, so now move on to Mr. Olsen.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, there's a great list and great to see the progress going on. On the tables, there's just one question I've got on one item. It's on page 13 of the table 39 of the agenda. It's just the only one that I see, I believe, which is on hold, which is the targeted rate for rainwater tank purchases for private properties built before 2007 is currently on hold. So can you, I guess, help me understand what that is and why it's on hold?
I'm afraid there's not a huge amount more detail I can provide there. As I mentioned earlier, these updates were provided to us by the relevant activity managers from across council, but what I can do is check in with that team to make sure I get the right answer for you and follow up.
Yeah, thank you.
Obviously, it shows you've read the all the detail. Thank you. Councillor Halliday.
Through you, Madam Chair. It's not actually a question. I just wanted to comment on the passion your team has here with regards to the work that's being done. Having seen this progress from literally nothing over the past 6 years to where we are now, it's just absolutely fantastic, and to be able to quantify it as well. So I just wanted to pass on that. I think one of the things we've got to be a little bit careful of is our language as we progress, because we hear a lot, oh, it's saving the ratepayer money, it's saving the ratepayer, but we've got to be a little bit careful, because from a ratepayer perspective, all that they will see is that translates into them paying less rates. And that's not actually the case here. What we're doing is we're talking about cost benefit, we're talking about efficiencies, we're talking about equipment that we replace, which was money we're going to spend anyway, but being spent in a way that helps that equation. So just a bit wary that we might want to start looking at changing. We're trying to change the paradigms in our community with regards to approaching this, and we want them on board with all this as well. So I just wanted to put that out there as just as something for thought. I just want to do a shout out, which is not here at the moment, to Councillor Hanford and also Community Board member Jackie Elliott, because it's great seeing that this climate action grant from local government New Zealand, that was initiated by them about 4 years ago, and it's great to see that the tail end of that now is we are saving money in loaning because that was put in place as such, but a great incentive there as well. But just kudos, great work, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Halliday. So now we'll move on to the recommendation, which is on page 26, which is that we note the progress for this year, that we've finalised and published alongside some of our other greenhouse inventory work. So do I have Councillor Coe, Mr Judge, seconding that? Any right of introduction? Well done. Yes. Yes. So I'll put that motion to the table. All those in favour? Against? Motion is passed. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, team, for putting this work together. And now we'll move on to the last presentation, which is by Rob and Evelina. Thank you.
I'll just quickly kick in first again. So the following update showcases the Green Our Neighbourhood program. This was delivered prior to COVID, and it was through the Connected Communities team. And I just wanted to highlight that this is where our team meets in the middle. Last year, our restructure joined the Climate Action and the Connected Communities team. And so this is a great project, an example why our teams were united. So I'll hand it over to Rob.
Thank you, Monique, and good afternoon, everybody. Ko Rob Dunn Toko Ingoa. My role within our team is Community Sustainability Advisor. I'll take the report as read, but I will speak briefly to some key points. So, as you can see on the slide that we've got up on the screen, the overall objectives across our community outreach and education programs are encouraging community connection, well-being and resilience, developing sustainability and climate-related understanding and capability, and collaborating with our communities through positive action. The broader context for this work is that outreach and education is a key lever for positive relationship building and enabling community and council priorities, enabling principles of the Climate Emergency Action Framework, and collaborating with our communities towards realising our district-wide 2040 carbon neutral goal and other strategic priorities. Now, Matt and Jamie gave an update before on a lot of the work that we've done across the organisation, And in some ways, having our own house in order enables us to step that work out into the community, and that's the focus of this update. Now, happy to answer questions about the broader program that we've got up on the PowerPoint in a moment, but for now I'll hand over to Evelina, who will talk specifically about our Greener Neighbourhoods program. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Rob. Kia ora koutou, ko Evelina Tukuwingoa. So I'll try and keep this brief because most of this information is in the report anyways. But as Monique said, we have run at Council the Greener Neighbourhoods program before. It was between 2010 and 2019. Some of you might actually remember the program from previous years, and we have made just a few small changes this year just to better encourage community participation and togetherness, as well as fitting within council current council resourcing. So the main objectives of this program align with those broader objectives that Rob just outlined. So ideally, we're hoping to build community and neighbourhood resilience, bring our communities together, and encourage individual champions and leaders in Kapiti, who we think will then become great encouragers for other people in the community as well. This is an important lever that we see in promoting positive climate action within the community. We know from talking with previous coordinators and also participants of the program in previous years that there's some really strong anecdotal evidence that this program has long-lasting environmental impacts as well as relationships built within the community. For example, not only are there community gardens that are still around now that came about during Greener Neighbourhoods, but also predator-free paikakariki as well. So I think I'll leave it there, but happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Rob and Evelina. So, Councillor Coe, questions?
Thank you. Look, I'm just, what's going through my mind as a next step is whether we can engage the community even more along the lines of what Predator Free has done, and maybe encourage the establishment of a community group that oversees things for the whole of Kapiti and really, drives that whole program, because I know there are people in the community that are really passionate about this stuff. Can we not facilitate that, by bringing together some of these little groups, and forming a committee and, giving them some funding to get going, giving them some funding to support the admin side of things, and just establishing it as an incorporated society or a trust or something like that to really drive these programs hard, to a greater extent than what council can do alone. Because I think, those passionate volunteers will, probably grow out a lot more than what we can physically do within our resources.
Great suggestion, and something we'll work with Andy Mackay with his work with the biodiversity team. So this one is particularly in that neighbourhoods, and it's an opportunity, I guess, to bubble up. And I think it's a great initiative to have conversations with Andy as well. For this project it's bringing the communities together. We have so many people who are new to Kapiti and might not know our neighbours very well. So it's a lot of based around resilience, combating loneliness, but also reducing, some of the conversations of where we can talk about reducing emissions and such, and activity and being involved into the community. So it's that impact, long-term impact, where our role through this will be bring people together and see what interests they have, and if it's predator-free, how do we support them for that next step? So I see that what you've suggested is another one that we could probably talk with Andy about. What does that look like in the larger scale when we have these active groups, perhaps dotted through our communities? Is that? kind of a little bit, it's a bit, because this is a 5 neighbourhood or community, really small community initiatives for this program, and I guess it's answering to the suggestion of a larger operating model, which I've just seen Waikanae, for example, do a whole heap of predator-free initiatives as well. So it's looking to them and supporting how could council help to celebrate and support those initiatives as well.
I think predator-free is another separate issue, and to me, there's room to have one, predator-free Kapiti organisation with. I know there's a lot of groups set up individually. We have predator-free Te Horo, we have predator-free Waikanae. Yep. Why not bring them all together under one umbrella, focusing on predator-free? But that's a specialised group, but I think there's room to do a similar kind of thing in terms of this this campaign as well, by creating an umbrella framework. And incorporate societal trust or whatever, and funding it, and just sort of seed that, and get them working within the communities to engage more people.
I think that's a great idea, and we'll see, because I know that there are some initiatives within council staff that might be able to facilitate that.
And we have over the fence kapa, and this one is, we're standing it up for the first time and just checking to see, I guess, is it working well? Any improvements? We've learned a lot. The team has done a lot of work looking at what went well, what was challenging, how to make it the best kind of initiative, and then looking at that once we've kind of got a run on the board, I guess, again, with this current people who've been involved, because there's no one left at council who was involved in that delivery.
Yeah, so that's why I just thought, to have a sort of a vision of setting up something that is community driven. Because that way you get a lot more leverage in terms of people power and engagement and all that kind of thing, with us, in behind supporting it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So now move on to Councillor Halliday.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Great work going on here, guys. It's an interesting one, isn't it? I hear what you're saying, Liz, and no disrespect to council officers at all. We're always pushing harder. As I noted in the last presentation, we are coming a long way, and things are rocking, speeding up, that sort of scenario there as well. We always want more, but things are heading in the right direction, and I can see that momentum picking up. 2 things I wanted to perhaps just highlight. We've got different areas working in this space. You guys are working on the community one. There's waste minimalisation, which has got its own education programs, etc. There's also the economic development business sustainability group. And these are all bubbling up now, and I guess tying into what was talked about bringing an overarching group together that perhaps has some representation from each one of these. And then I'll do a shout out to the Zero Waste Hub, because we've got a space there that's actually been geared up towards interaction with community. Would be, to me, an ideal space for that to be evolved in. If you like. So just wanted to flag that, because I've got a sneaky suspicion this is where you guys more than likely have talked about all this stuff potentially heading, but there's different parts here, and in the past, the council's been, I don't want to say, I ain't going to say the word guilty, of working in silos. I can see those silos breaking down, but it seems to me like we're getting to a point where the collective strength of these groups, it starts dropping down, is going to become more powerful than the individual parts as such. So just wanted to bring that up. And just say thanks, guys. Fantastic work.
Thank you, Martin. So now we'll move on to Mr. Moore.
Thank you. I want to reiterate some things that Councillor Coe, a fellow resident in Te Horo of mine, is as well. Rachel Ashdown and Andy Mackay's biodiversity team came out to look at the beach as we were rolling out some of the predator-free work in collaboration with Greater Wellington Regional Council, done right up to Otaki River, in fact, along that coastline. A whole lot of bait traps as well as the big dock traps as well. Rachel highlighted the importance, as Andy has over numerous years, about collaborating with communities. So what Councillor Coe said is really important. To do these things by yourselves is really hard. She identified invasive species like caro and lupins that are on the beach, and 20, 30 years ago these were nice to have, but they're not now. But council don't have resource or staff to do this. So how we collaborate together and have a strategic approach through the whole district may be a really good path forward. Communities are really keen to help on these things. Andy supported our community with providing resources in terms of plants for riparian planting, for instance, along the Mangagoni. So there is a real desire there in community. We've seen it with all the predator-free groups that are all, as somebody mentioned just now, all operating in silos. So to bring these together would be a really great outcome of this education and this reach into community. So I just want to contribute that to this conversation.
Through you, Madam Chair. Just to speak to the last few points, thank you. Some really great comments here. And I think we can all see the potential for these programs that we've highlighted there, for them to grow and evolve in the future. And as was suggested, maybe with a bit of an overarching umbrella, so that probably the climate action grants are a great example of council getting behind and really enabling our passionate community groups and really just extending the work of what we could do with our resources. So there may well be an opportunity. I think another good example is the climate think tank that was running recently, and there may well be a good example for all of this to evolve. I know other councils have models like the Nelson Tasman Climate Forum, for example. There may be a broader overarching model that could evolve in the future that council has a supporting and enabling function, but really we're just connecting and empowering all of the great people in our community who want to do this work. This may not be the year to set that up, but I think we can all see the potential. So, yeah, thank you for your comments.
So, Councillor Halliday.
Sorry, I just wanted to bring up a quick point. I've just punched in greener neighbourhoods into KCDC's website, and all I'm getting here is greener neighbourhoods here published prior to 2016 and that sort of stuff. So just on the web page, we might want to park all that stuff somewhere so that when people are looking for this, it crops up, because I've got some neighbourhoods I could already want to plug into this potentially. As such, just pointing it out.
Thank you for that comment. Yes, I have seen that webpage as well. Our new webpage is on the way, and that's really good feedback. I'm thinking once the official page is up, it probably will come up first before those blog posts, but yeah, it's cool that it's still there.
That's great. No, thank you.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you for raising that, Councillor Halliday. So that's the end of questions. So I suppose I just wanted to thank Rob and Evelina and Monique for bringing this to us. And so if we look at our recommendations on page 49, so the second recommendation that talks about, so we've had a really good conversation around this table about other directions in terms of our greener neighbourhoods, but also other education and outreach programs. And I think probably the message you've heard today is about having an overarching program or some way of connecting all these sort of activities that occur. You've heard about our press-free initiatives in various communities, and maybe that can be brought together into an overarching one as well. We've also got our emergency response activities, which often are outside a lot of this, but they tie in very much to our resilience. And then also, you've got, as I mentioned earlier on, about how we as individuals look at our carbon emissions and also our waste minimisation as well. So there's actually, a few things in there. I know it's probably not, there's a big, sort of area, but I think, being able, just actually even asking that question shows that, we're looking at, I suppose, looking at different ways of connecting all parts of our communities, which is really, really great. So as I said, on page 49, we have two recommendations. One is to note this report, and the second one is to provide further direction. I think we've done that, and thank you very much for everyone. So can I have a mover for these recommendations?
Madam Chair, can I just ask a question about the recommendations that are there?
Yes.
So if we've already provided further input, is that recommendation necessary, is my first question. The second follow-up question to that would be, if it is still necessary, when is that opportunity for more input to come? because it doesn't specify it. It just leaves it as a random recommendation that has nothing to tag it onto or move forward with. It's superfluous to the paper.
So thank you for that.
Would be my just a
Yes.
couple of questions. And
Yes.
is there a change of wording that's needed on that second
Yes.
recommendation to make it have some sort of teeth or grounding?
Yes, so thank you for that question. So I will put that back to the staff because obviously there were some thoughts in behind putting that recommendation in there. And where was it hoped it would lead?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was a reasonably open question. It was an opportunity for elected members and community board members to give us further directional input as they saw appropriate. If necessary, we could come back to this committee in April. Would be the next opportunity, I believe. But take your point, it might be a technicality that the way that's worded or the inclusion of recommendation B may not be necessary at all. So if you'd prefer to remove that, that's fine with us.
I'm not meaning it to be a criticism of staff in
Yeah.
terms of the writing.
Yes.
I felt it needed something that
Yes.
has some purpose to it.
So then another question, maybe I'll ask the members of this committee, would you welcome, some follow-up as to where, with the conversations we've had today about where this could lead?
Yeah, could we
Councillor.
perhaps change that second recommendation to say that we will, staff will come back to us with an update following the conversation we've had today?
Yes.
With what the next steps might be?
Yeah,
Something
I
along
was
those lines?
Thinking along those very lines
Yeah.
as well, so we can and provide a further update.
Yeah, based on
Yes,
feedback
yes,
from today's
yeah.
meeting, yeah.
Thanks, Lawrence. But very, very good point. I do wonder whether there's a workshop required around this.
So if I can just for a minute, I'm just wondering, are staff able just to amend those so we can see them on the overhead while Martin's talking?
Yeah, look, again, that's why I actually spoke the way I spoke, because it was just something off the top of my head. But, sitting down and thinking a little bit more about all this, I'm sure we could come up with some really, and in an interactive way as well, find out what's going on, add some thoughts and that sort of stuff. And it's as an awareness to us as both community board people and elected members, having that awareness from our perspective means that we can be, when we're interacting with groups or people or anything like that, we can be looking at ways that we can help link groups or pass those groups on to you guys as well, to start creating a more structured ecosystem in that space. But that would be my thought. Would be I think there would be a lot of interest to just have that sort of interactive space through our workshop or something.
As I'm not a member of this committee, I will just comment. I don't want to create more work for our staff than what they've already got underway. Just doing something in a recommendation on the fly that requires more work without any sort of discussion around what that would look like at a staff level, because I know this team's already under the pump in regards to work that's going on. So I guess
We'll put it to the vote.
that would be my question in that space.
I would have thought they're doing the work anyway, and it's just a matter of giving us another update. I don't see it being any extra work, it's just continuing on the path. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that a fair reflection, that you'll just keep chugging along and just give us another update? Yeah. Yeah. It's not another report, just provide a further update, whether it's a briefing or a whatever,
Okay, so do we have someone who will second this amendment? Is that what we do, Mr. Judge?
You're moving that.
Yes, I'm moving that, yes, and so we have a seconder. So we have two recommendations. I can take them separately or together. Okay, recommendations, all those in favour? Those against? So both the recommendations are passed. Yes, yes, thank you very much, everyone. So now that, and thank you very much, Monique, Rob, Evelina, and Jamie and Matt for the last three presentations. Thank you very much, and the work that you're doing behind all that as well. So now we'll move on to page 53 to confirm the minutes of the meeting we had on the 7th of November 2024. So is there anyone here who will basically to recommend these minutes in a seconder? Councillor Coe, Mr. Moore. Any discussion? All those in favour? Against? Passed, thank you. So now we are getting near the very end of our meeting. Yes, I will read the closing karakia. May blessings be upon us all and our business be successful so that our words endure and our language endures. May the spirit be strong, may we be settled and in balance among the activities we will all do today. Join, gather and unite, forward together. So thank you very much for your attending today, those who've left, for staff who have got us here today with their support and their reports that they've provided to us and the works that they do. So thank you everyone and enjoy the rest of your day. This meeting is now closed. Thank you.